In this video, I'm gonna present a complete guide on how you can learn to squat without back pain. There's a lot of people out there who suffer with this problem. I was one of these people. For years, I followed all of the correct squat cues that were being taught online, but I always had back pain when I was squatting and I was never able to fix it. That led me to tweak my back on several occasions, which further discouraged me from practicing the squat. So I ended up just avoiding it a lot of the time. And it took me over 8 years since the time I first started lifting weights in high school to finally be able to squat pain-free on a consistent basis. To this day, I've never found a video online that packages up all this information I'm about to share with you and presents it in a clear and usable way. So I figured I would just make it. So without further ado, here are a series of tips that I found incredibly useful for improving the way my squat feels and allows me to feel squats more in my quads instead of my back. So the first thing we're gonna discuss is foot pressure. So this is gonna be the number one thing that you're gonna wanna focus on in your squat. So if you're squatting and you run into any problems, the first thing you're always gonna wanna check is your foot pressure. So when you're squatting, you wanna have nice, even foot pressure. Not too much on your toes, not too much on your heels, nice and balanced right in the center. So when you approach the bar and you unrack it, so a good thing you can do at the start is you can lean forward and lean back and then maybe lean side to side. And then after you do that, you can find your center. So then once you find your center, practice a couple reps with that. And I bet off the bat, your squat is already gonna feel better. And this also goes for pressure on the inside and outside of your feet too. So I just made a video about this that I'll show on the screen right here, but if you have too much pressure on the inside edge of your foot, that can lead to some knee cave potentially. And then if you have too much pressure on the outside edge of your feet, that probably means you're using a knees out strategy, which I also don't recommend doing. And then, like I said, you wanna make sure you're not putting more pressure on one foot over the other and vice versa. So a good squat always starts with good foot pressure. The next cue, which is very important, is you wanna focus on maintaining a long spine. So what do people who aren't confident in their squat look like when they're doing a squat? I'll show you. So they get under the bar and then they're very cautious when they're walking out, and maybe they're a little bit hunched over. They're crumpled up and they make themselves small. So you wanna do the opposite of that. You wanna make yourself nice and tall. You don't wanna do it to the point where your ribs are flaring out excessively. You wanna make sure your spine is nice and neutral, but you wanna make sure you're maintaining a long spine the whole entire time you're performing the squat. Because when we squat, we want a nice balanced posture where your skull is sitting on top of the rib cage, which is sitting on top of your hips. And I'm a big fan of simplicity when it comes to cueing, and long spine helps you achieve all of that. Because when you focus on making yourself tall, all of a sudden you self-correct for all those little posture issues that you were dealing with. There's a concept in ballet called oppositional energy. So basically, to find strength and stability in their poses, they'll lengthen their body from each end of the pose that they're trying to make. So that just helps them find good tension and stability when they're practicing those poses. So the same goes for squatting. And this leads me to the next piece of the squat, which is the bracing, because you've probably heard so many different things when it comes to bracing. One of the most common things that I hear people say is that they feel like they need to brace their core by flexing down, because that's what they think when they hear brace your core, like flex your stomach like someone's about to punch you in the stomach. And in a squat, that's actually not what you want to do. Because like I said, when we're squatting, we want a nice, tall, neutral posture. And part of a neutral posture is having a natural curve in your lumbar spine, which gets eliminated if you focus on flexing your core down. So there's a really good YouTube video I just saw. I forget the guy's name, but I'll link it in the video and I'll show you the video. This guy's squatting like over 600 pounds, and you can see as he has the bar on his back and he's, breathing, you can see his abs like flexing. And then as soon as he sets his brace and he breaks at the hips and the knees to descend into the squat, you see that his abs don't go soft, but they're not flexed and contracted because he's focusing on keeping a rigid brace in his lumbar spine. This is just reciprocal inhibition, right? Like if one side of your body contracts, the other is gonna have to relax to a degree. So that is gonna be what your squat is actually gonna look like. So I've noticed a lot of people, if they spend time on flexing their core, they just end up running into a whole bunch of issues with their squat, and it's just kind of confusing because language is really, really important when you're teaching someone a complex movement like a squat. And then in terms of the breath, don't overthink it. Just breathe into your diaphragm, hold it for most of the duration of the rep, and about 50% of the way up the rep, you can exhale the air. So let me just show you what that means. So you're gonna approach the bar, If you really have trouble finding good tightness in your core, what you can do is you can exhale all your air. You'll feel your abs flex, and then you inhale into that exhale. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold that inhale till about 50% on the way up. So I'm gonna show you again. So what you wouldn't wanna do is this. So I just lost all of my intra-abdominal pressure by exhaling at the bottom. So this is the whole of the squat is the bottom portion of it, like this transition right here. So you wanna have the air in your lungs at this point, all the way up to maybe about here, and then you can start to exhale. So that is gonna make you feel much stronger in the squat. Another thing I look for in the squat is that the hips and the upper back chest area are rising at the same rate. So here's what I mean. So a lot of people who struggle with their squat looks something like this. The hips rise faster than the upper back. So what you want instead is to make sure the hips and the upper back are coming up at the same rate. So a telltale sign that the weight is too heavy for someone is when it looks like that. So what happens there is your body isn't moving as a unit anymore. It's moving kind of like as two chunks. So when you focus on making this area and this area rise at the same rate, you're moving as one unit. Another very important component of the squat is you want to allow your knees to track directly forward over your feet. So I mentioned this earlier in the video, but you do not want to use a knees out strategy. You hear it all the time from trainers, physical therapists, influencers, etc. They all tell you to push your knees out, but you don't want to push your knees out in a squat because, as we learned earlier, that's going to cause the inside edge of the foot to pop up. And then now you've just sabotaged your ability to produce force into the floor. So again, you wanna make sure you have nice, even foot pressure, and your knees are gonna track directly forward on top of the feet because your joints are stacked that way. Your joints need to be stacked in order to produce force. It's the same thing in a bench press. If you're bench pressing and your hands are not stacked on top of your elbows anymore, you're gonna have a really tough time pushing that weight up, or maybe even if they're up here. So you want your wrists on your elbows so you can push that bar away from your chest. So the same principle applies here. If your knees are out, all of a sudden your joints aren't stacked anymore, and now you're gonna have a really tough time standing up. So the same goes for if the knees are too far inwards. So that's why you wanna have your knees track directly over your feet in a squat. Just this tip alone is gonna massively improve how much you feel squats in your quads instead of your back. I don't have these with me right now, but another thing you can do to improve how much you feel squats in your quads as opposed to your back is using wedges or maybe some Olympic weightlifting shoes or something like that. So what that's gonna do is it's gonna give you a little bit of artificial ankle flexibility, and it's gonna allow your knees to track even forward over your feet while maintaining a little bit more of an upright back. So you can also elevate your heels by standing on some plates, but I don't love this one because something about the feeling of having nothing under my feet right here just feels weird to me. A lot of people are totally fine with it, so if that's good for you, you know, go for it. I don't see any problem with that if you feel like it's fine. Another really underrated tip, and this is gonna sound very counterintuitive, is that you might just need to relax more. Now, here's what I mean. So a big problem that people run into is that they're too tense, whether because that's all that they hear people say is to really tense and stiffen up and get as tight as possible, or they're just nervous and not confident with their squat. So you can even try this right now. So I want you to do a squat, and I want you to flex and tense your whole body, especially your legs, as much as possible. And I want you to try to squat deep and comfortably doing that. And I want you to do a second squat where you just focus on relaxing your quads and then just sitting down into as deep of a squat as you can. That one cue was a huge eye-opening moment for me. My coach, Jeff Wolf, mentioned something about that, and I also heard Lucas Aaron, Range of Strength, talk about that as well. He said he was watching a video of a member of the Chinese Olympic weightlifting team squatting, and he translated the video, and the coach was telling the athlete to relax his quads when he was squatting. So that's a game-changing cue, because I mean, if you think about it, when you're squatting, your quads have to lengthen. You know, you have to be able to sit down and these have to be able to stretch out. So how are they going to be able to stretch out if you're so focused on, you know, being tight and just, you know, tightening them up as much as possible? They're not going to be able to do it. So try relaxing your quads next time you squat. You still want to maintain a lot of stiffness in the back, and like, you know, again, we want to see the upper back and the hips rise at the same rate. As long as those basic points are there, relaxing your quads is only going to improve your squat, in my opinion. And the last tip I'll give you, which isn't necessarily a tip, it's just a different squatting variation, is to do more pin squatting. Pin squatting is amazing because it just lowers the stakes of the movement. So instead of squatting with a bar on your back and you have to be able to maintain strict posture as you're transitioning out from the hole, with pin squats, the bar just rests right down on the pins, and then your body will self-organize to find the strongest position to stand up from that bottom position. It's just a much easier and more approachable way to work on your correct squatting pattern, because that's where everybody messes up. They mess up on the way up. The way down, everyone usually is okay. It's on the way up where, like, you know, the hips will shoot up or like something weird will happen in the squat. So doing more pin squatting was like a godsend for my squat training. It helped me to really improve the way my squat felt. And you can do it as a front squat variation, or you can do it as a back squat variation. You know, safety bar as well works. And as for sets and reps, you can just take your normal squatting program that you're running right now, just run it with pin squats, and you'll get the exact same results. Even better results if your squat is, you know, currently not in a great state. So those are my best tips for improving your squat if you have back pain currently and you're having trouble feeling your quads. If I missed anything, let me know. If I didn't explain something thoroughly enough, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.